Hi, my name is Robbie McGee. I don't usually get on video. However, I can no longer sit back and say nothing. The guilt is too heavy to bear anymore. I cannot stay silent anymore. I've seen the same story over and over and over again. A black man gets murdered by a white man in a power position. My voice may be small, but if I continue to stay silent, then I have no voice. Please listen to my experience and join me along with Allies for Black Lives on July 1st, 2020, on Robie Street in Halifax, where we will celebrate and mourn the lives we have lost. I'm asking you to wear black. Come spread the language of love at 2 p.m. for 8 minutes and 46 seconds when we draw a line across our city and across our nation, just like we do when we celebrate and mourn the lives of sports players on jerseys. Let our loved ones in heaven know that we are drawing a line and are committed to doing better for them. We are calling for a nation's rebirth. July 1st for Canada and July 4th for our American brothers and sisters. My story starts in a neighborhood that was considered a bad part of town. When I was 2 years old, my parents dressed me up as a baby for Halloween and took me around a predominantly black neighborhood. The same neighborhood I lived in. They thought it was the funniest thing and told the story proudly. The first real memory happened in that same neighborhood. When I was out playing with a younger boy. I was 5. We got into a pushing match. I got hurt and ran home crying to my father that another boy hurt me. What happened next changed me, but not how you might think. My father dragged me by the scruff of the neck down that street and threw me in the middle of the street. Ordered me to fight. I remember a huge crowd surrounding us and yelling, screaming for us to fight. I tried to run, but kept getting pushed back. Before I knew it, I was getting kicked in the face. I turned into a puddle of blood and tears on the ground. My father dragged me back to our house, tore off his belt, and started beating me, calling me a nigger lover, asking me why I let that little beat me up. Do you know what I got out of that? Do you know what I got from that beating? I learned to fight. I started an intense training program that included movies from Jean-Claude Van Damme, Chuck Norris, and Karate Kid. I learned that I need to fight. So I started picking fights. I bullied kids from grade primary all the way up to grade 6. I became a bully. And I definitely hurt a lot of people for that I am truly sorry, especially if you were one of those kids. My mother left us when I was 3, so it was up to my father to raise my younger sister and me. He had a grade 3 education, and he couldn't seem to keep himself out of jail. That put me in the foster system. At age 10, my mother popped back in my life with her new man, and he was equally as racist as my father. When we moved out of a women's shelter into Fairview, I moved 2 buildings down from a kid that would become my best friend for several years. The only catch was I wasn't allowed to hang out with him because he was black. This is the first time I actually found out what the word related to. My stepfather introduced me to that word again, and he forbid me to play with my friend. So in order to play with him, I had to sneak around and hang out with him. If I got caught, I would lose all my privileges and rights that I had at home. By this time, I had lost my rights and privileges so many times for fighting that I was afraid to fight anymore. So I stopped. I stopped fighting. One day, I got into an altercation with my friend, and I didn't want to get in trouble for fighting. So I started calling him a fucking and I seen something in him change. And he started hitting me passionately, and I didn't fight back. Somehow I knew that every time he hit me, I deserved it. It wasn't long after that, a black man was hired on to the Halifax Fire Department. So my parents decided to move to Bridgewater. At that time, an all-white town. I don't remember if I ever made up with my friend before we moved. But I later saw my friend on the news. The reason he was on the news, he had a 7-foot cross lit on fire on his front lawn, and people out on his lawn chanting, "Die! Die!" Do you know what I did about that? Nothing. But I felt a small empty hole. And what my parents didn't know when they moved to Bridgewater was that Bridgewater was the biggest basketball town in Nova Scotia. And here is where I would find men that I would strive to be like. Men like Grant Hill, Hakeem Olajuwon, Allen Iverson, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Shaq, and the man I wanted to be, Reggie Miller. Basketball gave me hope. Black men were my role models. Thank you, NBA, for giving these men a platform. My stepfather watched a lot of basketball and football, but always called basketball ball. One day I gathered the confidence to point out to him that baseball and football both had black people. Why is it okay to watch these sports, but not basketball? I was met with the back of his hand. At 18, I left home. At 20, I had my first child. He is half Lebanese. Not one of my parents showed up to welcome him into this world. Why do I tell you this? I have been fortunate enough to have failed the first lesson that my father tried to teach me. Then I found amazing people to look up to. People that have had it much worse than me. But they used their platform to give me hope. I'm telling you my story because I was an inch away from becoming that police officer. If a couple small details had changed in my life, I may have been that police officer that killed George. I feel like it is so important to share my story because that was only 35 years ago. My son is now 20, old enough to have a kid of his own. My middle daughter's best friends are Korean. My youngest daughter's best friends are Filipino and African. As a matter of fact, my youngest daughter, in her first year of school, ran to me and my wife, with her best friend, yelling, "This is my best friend. We are twins." My daughter's best friend was a foot taller than her and had the most beautiful black skin you could ever imagine. I was so proud. I was able to break the cycle. My children had laid the path of innocence. It is our responsibility to continue to lead with the language of love. The government has acknowledged the separation of color and has policies and organizations to aid black communities. What I see is not the problem that is written in our policies. It is the minorities that manage to sneak under the radar. It is not the police that is the problem. It is the individuals in these organizations. We need to come together as the majority with the language of love. Dr. Martin Luther King got started with the march. Unfortunately, he was not given the opportunity to complete his mission. One lesson I learned, but took a long time to hit home and truly understand, is Nelson Mandela's words. As I walked out the door toward that gate, I would lead to my freedom. I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. If we unite in diversity, it leaves the racist as the minority. Unity is diversity. It's time to unite in the language of love and have empathy for the new minority. I've not spoken to my parents in many years. I have no idea if they've changed. I pray they have. But if they haven't, it's time to show them and everyone else that they are the minority. If they are the minority, it will be easy to find them and help them with their problem or help them out of our society. It took a very long time for me to leave my bitterness and hatred for them behind. But the day I let go, I too was freed from the prison I held myself in. Please share your message of vulnerability and help others understand your pain so we can all move forward with the language of love. Thank you. I love you all.